Hello and welcome back to the Delve podcast. Today we're talking about how are therapists trained. Now, if you are not someone who is becoming a therapist, you may wonder if this episode is relevant for you. And what I will say is
It is.
It is.
It
Because
is.
listen, you might have a therapist yourself. And if you do, wouldn't it be helpful to know how they were trained? How they got their credentials? What are all those letters after their name? What does that mean? So we're going to talk all about it today. And we have our special guest back with us, Dr. Andrea Bink. Very happy to have you again.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yay! Here at Delve, we offer individual, couples, group, and family therapy. If you're interested in a free consultation call, head on over to delvepsych.com. That's DELVEPSYCH.com. Check us out on Substack, delvepsych.substack.com. Check us out on Instagram at delvepsychchicago. And as always, please spread the love with this podcast. We're dropping a lot of great knowledge. Got a lot of knowledge nuggets for your ears. So spread
And
the
for your
love.
brain.
For your brain.
Yes. Into your
Yeah.
ears, into your brain. Okay. How are therapists trained?
Wait, we
What
missed
a
a step.
big-
We have to
What's the
introduce
step?
ourselves, Allie.
Oh my God. Hi, I'm Allie. I'm a staff therapist here at Delve Psychotherapy of Chicago.
And I'm Adam. I'm the executive and clinical director at Delve Psychotherapy of Chicago. Hey, we've done 60 some odd episodes. I think that is literally the first time you've ever missed that step.
I was
So.
just so excited to introduce Andrea. So
Thank
that's what happened.
Andrea, I'm a clinical psychologist at Delve Psychotherapy of Chicago.
All right, off to a great start here. So,
We're on it. We're on it.
Should we? This seems like a monster topic. How are therapists trained? So, Adam, I'm going to let you start where you want to start with this.
Yeah, let me give a little bit of the lay of the land. Firstly, to say that there are a number of different types of programs. There are a number of different professions, if you will. A profession is sort of a pathway that is legally licensed by a given state. And as a result of that, there are a bunch of different pathways that you could be on that could be licensed by a given state. And some of those differ by different states. But I would suspect that there's roughly 6/7 that you might be thinking of. Those would be psychiatry, which is going to be an MD. That's a medical doctor. Psychology, which there's a bunch of different kinds, but clinical psychology is a common one. Counseling psychology being another one. Sometimes educational psychologist being a third sub-branch. You've got social work. You've got counseling. You've got marriage and family therapy. You've got nurse practitionering. And then you've also have coaches. And so each of those are different professional pipelines. And coaches are not licensed by any state so far as I'm aware of.
No, I think
And
a couple states do license
a couple
them.
states are licensing coaches.
I believe so. Yeah, but that's, I
Awesome.
haven't really looked into it.
Yeah, so we're not providing any legal guidance here necessarily. We're just providing a general overview of the lay of the land. But I think it's important to note that all of these different therapists are trained in different ways. There's a lot of overlap, but there's a lot of deviance as well. And we think some of those differences are important, but also some of the similarities. And I think as you're picking a therapist, it's important to know where they came from. One other thing that I will say is that the letters after the name, I'm glad that Allie brought that up. The letters after one's name are state specific in many cases. So sometimes they're an educational credential, such as Andrea and I have little PhDs. There's also such a thing as a PsyD. Those are educational credentials. That's different than our licensing credential, which mine is an LCP. Which is licensed clinical psychologist. That might look different in a different state. So the letters that you see could be different by different states. And then lastly, the other way that you could get letters after your name is for some sort of a certificate. So a lot of certificates have formalized courses, and then you could formally list that you have that certificate with those letters after your name. So sometimes when you see somebody with, I would say more than 2, you're probably looking at some certificate level credentials.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess somebody could look at all the different credentials and be like, whoa, like, how do I know what credential is right for me, I suppose?
Right. And the broader
Yeah.
question, does the credential itself speak to whether a particular therapist would be right for you? So that's one of the questions we could have here, because on some level, so here's a really good example to start to get at why I think this topic is really important. We had previously brought in somebody with a master's degree who had been doing therapy for a couple of years by that point, but they were not licensed. So not all master's degrees yield a license. And they were on their pathway toward a PhD, but their credentials looked on the surface almost identical to somebody who had never done therapy before a day in their life. In fact, there would be people who have a master's degree and don't necessarily, and it could be in psychology, but depending on the psychology program, they might have no practice experience. So on paper, it looked like this person had no experience. And, they were in an internship program, our internship program, to begin providing therapy. And I do know of at least one client that sort of said, I want somebody that's experienced. They've been doing therapy for hundreds of hours by that point. They were quite experienced, actually. Whereas it's possible in certain other pathways to actually be fully licensed and not have that much practice experience, or to have practice experience that is in particular modalities, or could be more in assessment rather than in therapeutic practice. So for instance, as far as I'm aware, in the state of Illinois, please double check me on this, but social workers, even clinical social workers, don't have a mandate. I think at the LSW level, I don't think that they have a mandatory number of hours that they get in order to get an LSW. And I think that's because in Illinois, the LCSW is the clinical certification. So a licensed social worker doesn't necessarily need clinical certification, but an LSW could be starting to do therapy to get their LCSW down the way. So you might be looking at somebody with a license and a master's degree and no experience, versus the other example I just gave you, where you could have somebody who does not have a license, is on their way towards a PhD, has a master's degree, and actually has a lot of experience. Blah.
Yeah. So you really don't know. I mean, long story short, don't count out someone. If somebody has a master's and you're like, oh, well, I just know I need someone with a PhD or something like that. Like, you never know. They could have like hundreds and hundreds of hours under their belt and experience.
Absolutely. Well, and I would say, and this is where I really want to pull Andrea in here too, but I have a PhD. I'm a practice owner. I've trained therapists for many, many, many hundreds, maybe even thousands of hours at this point, across several years. I've taught in graduate programs. Sometimes I'm not the right therapist for that particular person, perhaps on that particular day. And I just wonder how you think about this kind of question of experience and hours and degree certificate level and all of that, Andrea.
I think that you're right. It doesn't necessarily, the credential doesn't necessarily mean that that any one person is the right therapist for someone, right? It's about more fit and personality and like how people work and what people are looking for in a therapist and what the therapist is doing. I think the levels of, I think all of these disciplines get trained differently. They have different, just different models, and there's definitely they get trained in different modalities, like different areas of research. There's so many differences in with all of these letters behind people's names, that it matters if you fit with the person and the way that they do therapy more than what letters they have behind their name. Now you can, if you want to pick it apart and learn, like counseling psychologists learn in this way, and they learn these types of therapies, and they have this type of training. I don't know, maybe you might just say, okay, I want to find a counselor, I want to find a social worker, I want to find, but I think even among schools, they teach different, they have different foci and different ways of training. So yeah, and I think that's good. I think that's really great, because you're not going to resonate with every single person just based on where they went to school, what they did, what programs they did, where they trained, etc. I think it's really more.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think about Allie's experience in our training program, and I don't think we're terribly unique, but in Allie's training class, they trained alongside doctoral students and an art therapist. They had a social worker. I'm saying, I don't know why I'm third personing you. Allie, you had a social worker as your supplemental supervisor and a clinical psychologist as your primary supervisor. That's 4-ish professions right there, just in your one experience. And I know in my training experience, many of my colleagues were in different professions, either a PsyD program or in a master's level program. And so I think it's helpful to just know that there is a similarity of training across all of these experiences too.
Yeah. And I was trained some of my supervisors were, clinical social workers, nurse practitioners, like marriage and family therapists. I was trained by, one of my most influential supervisors was a counseling psychologist.
Right.
Yeah. So there was a lot of diversity among these professions in my training. And, my training was much richer for it. Definitely.
Yeah. I think so. So I have a question to both of you. If you were to kind of mix all of this information together and provide a bit of a take, how do you feel about the quality of training to prepare therapists to begin to do therapy? Let's say when they finish a program, or when they finish maybe their provisional licensure or their full licensure, at those kind of levels. How do we feel about the quality of training overall in these various industries?
I'll go first. I think it varies widely. I think some people have great training experiences, and really like the programs that they come from, and I think others are not as high in quality. And so I think I don't know. It's really hard, because it's like, how do you prepare someone to do the thing of therapy? You can do all these mock role plays and everything as much as you want, teaching everybody about the various, theories and modalities, whatever. But it's until you're actually in front of a real living, breathing person, and it's not a role play situation. I don't know. It's hard. How do you prepare to do that? So I don't know. That's what I'll say for now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a challenging question to answer, because I think there's so much that goes into training that so I guess there's so much that goes into training that each piece of it, you have to kind of think of each piece of it. So I think that certain professions under the, I guess, the umbrella of therapy get trained in a more more focused, a lot more focused attention to being in the room with somebody and being face to face with a person. And like Allie said, mock therapy sessions, or somebody listening in while you're doing therapy, or somebody actually doing co-therapy in a room and things like that. Some training programs actually do that and train people very well. Other training programs, I think, have a broader focus. And so sometimes it doesn't the idea of like doing therapy, they leave to sites like, like Delve, actually, like, okay, we're gonna send you off to do, we're gonna teach you the basics so that you're not going in totally cold, but we're gonna send you off to these training sites. And so depending on the quality of the training site, you'll get, more or less training. I think, some programs actually, they do both of those things. They'll do training at the site and training, in the classroom. But I think that I think it's tough. I mean, I don't know that every training program teaches us how to do therapy very well. And I don't know that every training site is sensitive to, I don't know. But I think there's a lot to learn if even, I don't know how to say this. Like, even if you're not getting the training that you wanted to get, that you're still learning a lot about the profession and about how things work. And
like even being in a setting where on paper it feels challenging to get the kind of training that you were anticipating, like a traditional kind of therapeutic training. You're still getting clinical experience and professional experience.
Yes.
I can think about that, especially when I did community mental health and worked in hospital settings. A lot of the time it ended up devolving into a lot of what I would call case management, much more in a social work style, and resource management and crisis management and things of that nature, aside from what I would think of as traditional kind of therapeutic approaches, because that's where the clients were and those were the needs that existed. And
I agree with that.
In many cases, we were talking through the mechanics of, building a resume, because that was more important than how they felt that day.
Yeah. But I also think that experience gives you what I think that the richness of that experience when I was doing that kind of work was the multidisciplinary, connections of making like, why do I know what a medical social worker does? It's because I had to connect people with a medical social worker. Great profession. Love medical social workers. It's just really
pay them a lot more.
Yeah, right. It's an amazing, just an amazing thing for people to be connected with, right? And I learned so much from the medical social workers that I was in contact with. And so having I think that's like the richness of being in a setting like that, even though that's not where we ended up working, informs our practice today. And it's just important.
Yeah, absolutely. And give a little blurb on what a medical social worker does, since we're shouting them out.
Do I remember? Medical social worker is somebody that basically is kind of, forgive all the medical social workers out there, forgive me if I'm wrong, but from what I remember, this was a while ago, it's somebody who connects you with services, like for somebody who has a chronic illness or is experiencing some sort of like medical something. There's somebody that connects you with services and it's kind of like a hub for social services, medical services, what other kind of services, even like practical things like getting somebody to clean your house or having kind of those services available to you. And also like if you need caregiver services, we'll connect you with those, especially in a multidisciplinary setting or an integrated medical setting like the VA, for example. Medical social workers connect people with all of the resources within the integrated health system.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So one thing I think I wanted to add to this conversation too is kind of I think this is a question for the state on some level. Any individual state has to write requirements for individual professions. And I wanted to kind of provide a little bit of commentary just on how I think we're doing on that front, which, to be honest with you, I think there are certainly ways to poke holes in the broader model of credentialing in a given, and licensing, I should say, and in any given state. But broad strokes, I feel like the model there isn't too bad. I think if you look at the hours requirements that they're expecting of people and the supervisory requirements that they're asking of people, I would say they're not too bad overall. You think about in Illinois, roughly you'll be getting, so in Allie's case, pretty much right after graduating, you'll be getting a provisional license. And that provisional license still requires you to work under supervision for 2 years. That seems reasonable to me, about 2 years. And then I look at the hours requirements, and they're somewhat challenging, but if you're working pretty much full time, then they're not too tough to meet. Part-time gets a little bit harder, and I do sometimes wish there was a little bit more maybe leniency for people that are trying, because getting into the profession is hard. And if we're trying to expand access, I do think that, relaxing the hours requirements just a little bit could really help with people that are trying to work part-time on the side or something of that nature. It really does kind of assume a full-time lifestyle. Whereas somebody could work part-time long enough to develop enough experience to get into the profession and then be able to do it more full-time. And yeah, I don't know. I wanted to speak to, by and large, I think that the states, or at least this state in particular, seem to do a pretty good job of estimating about how long it takes to get to basic competency and have the basic standards therein set for the supervisory hours and experience. I don't know. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's too bad.
Do you want to talk about how many hours?
I don't have them memorized per se.
I know I need like 3,000 something.
So there's a difference between your overall hours, like overall working hours, versus your direct service hours. I think your 960 counts as a year or something like that. So 960 direct counts as 1 year.
And a direct hour is a face-to-face with a client in a room, correct?
Yes.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it could be a virtual room. Sure. Yes.
Yeah, or virtual. Yeah, like face-to-face with a client for the hour that you're with the client, or the time that you're with the client. Yeah. And then there's other things. Yeah. Then there's other like, note writing and all the other stuff that goes into meetings. Yeah. Preparing for your clients, that kind of stuff that you can.
Yeah. So ultimately, it's really the rate limiter here is almost always the direct service hours. So like for Allie to get fully they and completely on her own and no longer under supervision, I think it's about 1,920. And they also have a limitation in Illinois that you can't just pack all that into 1 year, which I actually think is pretty astute. I think that they're basically saying, like, take your time here. Have the experience. Don't rush into getting all of your hours so that then you're fully licensed. Like, it takes time to kind of marinate in the profession and become a fully fledged individual before we set you off on your own. I don't think that's unwise.
So under supervision also means that can we explain what that is?
Please.
Yes.
Yeah. So somebody who is not licensed yet will work with somebody who is licensed. And that means that the licensed person is available to the non-licensed person while they're working, while they're seeing clients. And also there's an hour face-to-face supervision, or, virtual or in a room, like where we talk, the supervisor and the non-licensed person have a conversation about clients, about things that they're concerned about their professional development, about whatever it is that is salient in that moment or for that week. So it's kind of like you have a built-in mentor system. Then we have
monitoring
system, right? So I'm monitoring what the reading notes and monitoring what that other person, what the non-licensed person is doing. And then there's typically like a group supervision sort of situation where you have contact with a lot of different people in the profession that are kind of talking about their therapy, their professional development, just kind of like that. So it's actually you're getting a lot of contact with a lot of different people.
Now, one thing that I will say is a bit of a challenge within that is, let's again take Allie's situation, if you don't mind me continuing to focus on you, Allie. No matter how wise, no matter how astute, no matter how entrepreneurial Allie is, my understanding of the law, at least, and again, I'm not providing legal advice. I am a clinical psychologist who's speaking from memory here. But my understanding is that Allie cannot right now, with a provisional license, go out and start her own business. And she cannot be a 1099 with practices like an independent contractor, because that would imply that she's working on her own. She's independent, which if you're under supervision, you're not independent. You are dependent on the agency, which one potential downside of that is it does render these provisionally licensed folks as being dependent on agencies. And the only problem with that is that a lot of these agencies are rather predatory of those individuals. They are not providing a lot of resources. They aren't always providing the supervision that they should be providing. And they often take a massive split from the clinician. I had seen as low as 40% of the rate going to the actual rendering provider. The actual therapist would get 40% of the overall rate. And there's reasons for that. One of my biggest issues in this whole world is that we need to pay therapists better. The better we pay them, the easier all of this gets. Not automatically, but it gives us options to begin to address some of these problems. So a lot of practice owners are in really rough situations as a result of maybe the way that they've structured their practice or the clientele that they have. So they're trying to solve that problem. Many of them with well-meaning intentions, but some not. And the end result of that is very much that these people who are trying to get into the profession are often not paid enough, and they can't do a whole lot about it. And I think that that's a major challenge for practice owners, for individuals, that dependency question. But if you're a state, I don't know what you do about that, because you certainly don't want to then send unmarinated therapists out there to just start their own practices, hang up their signs, and do whatever public damage they can conjure that day.
Yeah.
Not that Allie would.
I like how you described them as unmarinated therapists. I'm gonna use that because that's funny.
Yeah.
But it's true. Like if after I graduated with my master's, if you were to just be like, okay, butterfly, fly away, you're all on your own, that'd be scary.
Well, it's not good for you, and it's not good for the people that
not at all.
The general public,
not
right?
At all.
Because there's just a lot of it's a heavily regulated profession.
Yes,
and so you need to know what to do.
Pardon my French, but there's so much confusing shit that happens in therapy. And the number of times, even as the practice owner of 6 years, that a question comes across my desk and my first response is, I don't know. And, then we have processes for working through that, of course. But I've refined that, as well as my consulting network, over years. So even if I was the most brilliant and astute person, if I had started my solo practice from day one completely by myself, I wouldn't know anyone to ask any questions to. So even if I was brilliant enough to solve most problems, I still need to talk to people. And it takes time to build that network and the practice of engaging that network.
Yeah.
I think when thinking about our training, that's kind of the one good thing. Not the one good thing, but one good thing about the internship postdoc model is that you do build that network of people. I don't think it always sticks, but it's oftentimes an inroad into having a community in the profession of people that you can go and you can call up and say, hey, can we talk about this thing that happened, or can we talk about whatever question comes up? And that is nice. And that's a little bit different than the master's level kind of, model, which is more formalized and I think offers a lot of that community.
Absolutely. Can we talk a little bit about the PhD style of training, because it is different?
Yeah.
It's long, it's prolonged for sure.
Very long. Yeah.
So Andrea, you get admitted into a graduate program, a PhD program specifically.
Mhm.
What happens during that first year?
The first year you take, if I recall correctly, you take classes. You have, I don't know, depending on the program. I think I took 5 classes my first semester, which was a lot. Then you have some sort of clinical experience.
Not always. I
Not
think
always,
ours is
though.
slightly unique.
First year is not always, but sometimes you get some clinical experience. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't know.
Yeah, pretty much. You take classes, and sometimes there's a little bit of clinical light experience. Those classes do tend to focus on the fundamentals of therapy.
Right.
And I want to talk about why they don't usually just throw us straight into therapy in year 1. I think the thinking there, I don't know this, but I think the thinking there is we don't know these people.
Right.
We need time to
Yeah.
see how they do in a professional setting, and see if any of their personality quirks show up, to make sure that we know them well enough to recommend that they go do clinical work.
Yeah.
So year 1 of a PhD program, and also counseling programs, in a lot of cases, you don't start year 1.
Yeah. No.
The accelerated programs do, but often you want a little bit of time in front of actual professionals to settle in yourself, but also then for them to make sure that you're actually fit for clinical duty.
Yeah.
Before then year 2 begins. And so roughly spring of year 1, you start applying to what we would call practica.
Practica.
You talk a little bit about that process?
Yeah. So I think it depends on the program. Some have built-in practica. Some have. We had a menu of choices to, places to choose from that we got to look up, and and then we make our applications, whatever that site wants us to, how they want us to do it. Typically, it's a cover letter. I don't know. I think that's all I had to do was really a cover letter and like some
CV.
sort of intent CV, and then you wait for them to call you, and you hope you get a placement that year.
The interview process is typically pretty short, pretty informal turnaround. There are efforts in Chicago in particular to formalize a lot of these things. So there's a couple of different networks that try to kind of create a more formalized process for this. I'd say with mixed successes. Sometimes it's great, sometimes not as much. But generally speaking, that's kind of leading into the first practicum experience, which is usually in a community mental health setting or a broader clinic. It's like generalized most of the time. It could be neuropsychological assessment-y, but usually I think they tend
not usually.
to go.
Yeah, I think that's usually second year. Yeah.
So at least our program was that way,
Yeah.
but I do think some others can flip that a little bit.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. Yeah. You kind of go into the community mental health space. Yeah.
often, or like a
Often.
clinic on campus or something like
clinic
that.
on campus, right? Yeah. Yeah.
So then your third year of graduate school.
So then in your second year, around spring, you apply again. So you make another application for your next practicum experience, which is, for me, was assessment. I don't know. I think it's typically an assessment practica, or like an experience. Yeah, typically, because they want, in a PhD program, they want you to have a broad range of experiences. I will also say that not only are we going to classes and doing practica at this point, we're also working in a lab doing research, having those experiences. So it's kind of, we do
writing a thesis.
We're writing a thesis. We're doing all of this stuff at the same time. So we apply in spring. Same process of interviewing. It's maybe a little bit more. There's a little bit more at stake at that point, and then
slightly more rigor, maybe.
Yeah, a little bit more rigor in the process, and then you finish up your first practicum. You might have some time in between, and then you go into your next one.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last one tends to be much more kind of an advanced experience. It's usually more specialized, and so people will in our program, people were doing some really interesting stuff in a lot of the kind of medical systems nearby. So you'd have people that were doing like transplant assessments. So is this person ready to do this like liver transplant? They'd be doing that kind of services. What are some other ones I'm trying to remember that people have done recently?
There's like advanced neuropsych practica, where you're doing neuropsychological assessments. If that's the road you want to go on. If you want to go into therapy, actually, I did a therapy practicum in, I forget what they call it, like a inner city hospital.
Oh yeah.
That was a really rich experience, really great.
Yeah. So then, hypothetically, you're now at the end of year 4. Sometimes it stretches into 5, and we start applying for internship.
Yeah.
What does that process look like?
Wow, where do I start?
First, I will say it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So by this time, of these people,
right? So
I'm exasperated just listening to this.
Right. And remember, all the while we're taking classes. Classes are usually
we're seeing
done
clients
in the 3rd year. We're seeing clients. We're doing research. We have, you should have your master's done by this point. You have to propose and comps, which is a make it or break it sort of experience. It's time consuming. It's hard to do. And that's in your 3rd year. And then, then you're writing your dissertation, you're doing other projects too. You're doing hopefully you're doing other research projects. So then internship comes, and you start applying. It's like in all of these things you're applying around the same time, around spring. I think in November you start, depending on what type of program you want to go to, but you look through a lot of programs, and I think you have to make decisions about whether you want to stay local, whether you want to go, spread your net wide across the country.
But it's national. It's national, and it's extremely formal. And I agree with you. It's not to be taken lightly. With a lot of applications to a lot of things, you can just throw out a couple of apps here or there or whatever else. This is very, very intentional. And I tend to find that people who are not thoughtful about how they pick where they're going to apply, and really thoughtful about how they put together their materials, are usually the ones that are struggling in the end. And often that's because of mentorship. It's like people not necessarily teaching them that's what they need to do. I will also say that there are plenty of people who are very intentional and very thoughtful and still don't end up with a placement. And so it's extremely competitive.
Competitive.
I've been on both sides of this, where I've interviewed some of the people that were applying to an internship, and it was like I'm going to talk to 20 fantastic candidates. I'm exaggerating here a little bit, but like every single one of them, it's like they're perfect. Like you're perfect.
A thing that they always said is you don't know why your application hits the floor. You never know why it hits the floor. So don't take it personally, because it's so competitive. And especially in a state like California, it's extremely competitive because everybody wants to stay here. You live here, your family's here, your community is here. So a lot of places, if you, like a wide net is probably better, but it's hard. It's hard for people.
It's so hard. Yeah, absolutely. So the internship application itself. Oh, by the way, when you were talking about searching through I built I
used
an app. You used my app?
You bet I did.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, to scan through all of the sites all over the country to make sure that you had the right ones. When you're doing the actual application itself, it is a tailored cover letter, and I'm telling you, if it will be clear as day to them if you did not tailor your cover letter to that specific site. They will know right away if you're generalizing.
Right.
The CV, even sometimes you want to tweak a little bit to match, but then you also have to do 4 essays.
to write 4 essays. Yeah, there's a prompt that they give you. There's 4 prompts that they give you. You have to write an essay for each, and they're
Right.
yeah. You can't write an essay like everybody else writes an essay. I mean, there's like a. You said to me one time, and it really helped me, is they're looking for conformity, and that was really helpful. But also, they're looking for, like, do you fit with us? Are you?
Sure.
Are
Yeah.
you? Are you? And when I say that, it's not like a snob sort of thing. It's just like, what's our culture? What are you
Sure.
looking for? What kind of thing are you trying to, like? What do you need to learn? What can we teach you?
Yeah.
Yeah. But they want it in a certain format. So it's
Absolutely.
within a format. It's like
Yeah.
a lot to think about. Yeah.
And I think maybe sometime we could do another episode that talks more about those particular applications, because I do think there is a segment of our listening population that might like some guidance on that. But I think it's helpful for people to hear just like how much goes into this.
Yeah.
And we're not done, because then the internship experience itself is the most strenuous training of all of it up to that point. It's full-time. You are not getting paid well. By the way, one of the things that I have the biggest beef with in all of this process is that if you apply, let's say in December or January, and you interview in January, February, I might be misremembering the timeline here a little bit, then you will match one day, a computer program spits out your match, and in March, you're starting in like June or July. Right. So in March, you might find out very, very quickly all at once that it's now time to move to Montana. Right. I think there's only, I always use Montana as an example. There's only like 1 or 2 sites in Montana, but I'm sure they're great. But out of nowhere, it's just sort of like pick up your entire life and move.
And the match, right? Yeah.
That's not stressful at all.
No.
Meanwhile, you're seeing clients and you continue
doing research.
Oh, how was your day? Great. Okay, great. Yeah, I might move to Montana in.
Yeah, I'm
3
pulling
months.
my hair out over here.
So that's sort of the context of all of it. It does, one of the things that I want to say, but we're not quite done with the whole experience here. But one thing that I do want to say is I do think that this process builds resilient people.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that's its intention, and I don't know if that should be its function, but good God, it builds resilient people.
Yeah.
You have to be resilient going through that. Absolutely.
The stamina it takes to get through a PhD program in clinical psychology is
a lot of the coursework wasn't difficult. A lot of it wasn't like cognitively extremely difficult, and it wasn't even all that practically helpful in certain circumstances. But good God, you learn how to just keep going.
Yeah.
The payoff is so delayed.
And I would say too delayed. At this point, I do think that what we're describing here is a little bit of a broken model. Maybe it served its purpose for a time, but frankly, I think it's too much. And I think if we're in the middle of an opioid crisis in America, a mental health crisis, a climate, and which I think is psychologically based in some ways, but climate and a political and social and systemic crisis, we got to get people into the profession. And yes, these things are all valuable, but good God, this is too much. And we're losing people at every one of these steps. There are people who've gotten all the way to internship and stopped or gotten stuck for a long period of time.
Or can't afford it. It's expensive.
Yeah.
It's not just the time, but it's an expensive process.
Because it also pretty much must be full-time. There are some part-times, but not many.
But also, like pre-pandemic, you had to fly to everywhere. Like if you had an interview, you had to fly there. People would fly to 4 or 5 different places in 3 days. I mean, there were hilarious stories about people who, like, their flight was delayed and their luggage got lost and they had to show up in their to an interview in their jeans, and it was like and what was it was a lot.
This doesn't work. This doesn't work anymore. It's too much. And we're not done, because then you also have postdoc, which is required to get your license.
Yeah. So you have to do a year of postdoc. You apply while you're in internship. You do the same type of interviewing. Typically people choose fewer. So I applied.
It is less formalized.
Yeah.
Typically, although it's less formalized. Trying.
Yeah, but it's less formalized. So this process is really funny because so you apply. I applied to, I forget, 20 internships, maybe 16. I think it's like 16 internships. I applied to two postdocs.
Yeah.
One day at like 8 o'clock, there's a day at 8 o'clock in the morning, or whatever it is, whatever time zone you're in, there's a time, and you expect a phone call. And if the phone doesn't ring right away, I think you weren't the first choice. but most people get a postdoc, right? It's not as competitive. It's a lot easier to get a postdoc. I actually got both of my choices. I got in both of my choices, but the phone call came like in 5 minutes, and it was the worst 5 minutes, I think, of my life. It was really tough, and I was like,
so this is the APIC process for postdoc?
Yeah, but it's less formal than that. Yeah.
Because mine was just like interview at some places, and
okay.
I was not a part of a
APIC,
formalized process at all.
Yeah. So then I got a phone call. I think it was 7 minutes in. I think it was 7 minutes, and I got a phone call, and I had, before the time, I had chosen which one I wanted. I wrote it down. I was like, okay, if they call, I'll go here. And they called, and I was like, what to say.
You're starting to panic.
Funny. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but it's a good experience. Yeah.
So I mean, I know we're running long on this a little bit, but and I know that Allie wants to rein us in, and that is the correct move. I will summarize here a little bit by saying this is a lot. I think it's too much. There's value in all of these places for sure, but I want people to be aware what these young adults who are often in their 20s, not always, but often in their 20s, are going through.
Yeah.
Just to sit in front of you and to try to help. It's so much. And I really do think the field needs to examine whether this is necessary or the correct way to do it any longer.
Yeah. I think a whole other conversation can happen around the barriers to entry of this profession.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
like the cost that it is, like how much it costs, and all of the ways that we leave people out, and that we're not bringing people into the profession. It's a soapbox of mine that I, would love to talk about at some point.
We need to.
But that's one of in all of this process that we're talking about, it does leave a lot of people out for a lot of different reasons.
That's a really good point, Andrea. Yeah, I mean, since I got a master's, I didn't go through a PhD program. This has been enlightening to me too. It's the first time I'm really hearing like all the years, what happens each year. It was even more involved than I even realized. So that's amazing. Yeah.
My whole process, mine was a little prolonged for a number of reasons, but my whole process start to finish, because I did a clinical master's first, and then I got injured in the middle of mine, so it kind of stretched things out. My whole process was 9 years. 9 years in a graduate program.
Wow, Adam. I didn't know it was 9 years. Yeah.
From starting in a master's program until I got my license. Well, got my license was 10.
Yeah.
So.
Oh my gosh. A decade of that's insane.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we are out of time for today, so we might have to skip the quote.
We can skip the quote for this one time, but maybe we do another topic, because it sounds like there's more here.
There are literally, you guys, I think you guys could have talked for another hour on all of this, and I would have been down to listen. So there's definitely more here, and I like Andrea's idea of the barriers to the field too. That seems really important. Well, thank you everybody for listening. I hope you gleaned some good insight and information from this podcast today. I know I did. If you're interested in our services here at Delve, head on over to delvepsych.com. That's DELVEPSYCH.com for a free consultation call. Check us out on Substack at delvepsych.substack.com. Add us on Instagram at delvepsychchicago. And we'll see everyone next time.
Bye.
Bye.